Bava Kamma Yud Gimel concludes the Gemara's discussion about issuing a hazmana to court, a subpoena to demand that somebody show up, and when you're allowed to take action against him. Some more halachas on that subject. Then we'll go back to our Mishnah for one brief explanation of the last line, and we'll begin our next Mishnah, which introduces in the Gemara the topic of Dina de Malchus Dina. When do we have to follow the laws as far as monetary issues are concerned of the local rulership? So let's begin. The Gemara brings a maimer of Chizda that when we summon someone to court, we give him a Monday, a Thursday, and a Monday. The court always convenes on Monday, Thursday, and Monday. We give him those 3 days. We call him. We let him come Monday. If he doesn't come, we let him come Thursday. If he doesn't come, we demand he come again on Monday. If he doesn't come the entire day Monday, then we write a shtar pesicha, which is a demand against him, and we can take his property away, and that goes into effect the following day, so that would be on a Tuesday. Where brings an incident, Rav Asi went to the home of Rav Kahana, and he saw that there was a woman who was ordered to come to court in the evening, and in the morning they already wrote a shtar against her. So he said, don't you hold of this halacha that you give him Monday, Thursday, and Monday? So he said that's only for a man who can be out of the town. He travels away, and therefore we want to give him the week to be able to be back in town. But if it's a woman, she doesn't travel, and therefore since she's in the city, if she doesn't come the first time she's called, she's already rebelling against the court, and the halachas can be put into place. Says Rav Yehuda, we don't give subpoenas, we don't issue orders to come to court, not in the month of Nisan or the month of Tishrei, because people are very occupied then with working the fields, and also not in Erev Yantif and not in Erev Shabbos. However, in the month of Nisan, you're allowed to issue a order for after Nisan, and in the month of Tishrei, you're allowed to issue an order for after Tishrei. However, on Erev Shabbos, to issue an order for after Shabbos, you're not allowed to do, and because the reason is people are so busy preparing for Shabbos, they will forget. They're not going to file it away properly. Says Rav Nachman, you don't give a order to people who come to hear the shir, the kala, the shir in halachas. You don't use that opportunity to serve someone. Also, people come to hear a shir about yantif. You don't give them a subpoena there, because otherwise people will not want to come to the shir. So the Gemara says it was a time where people came before Rav Nachman to hear the shir, and the people who wanted to force someone else to come to court asked Rav Nachman, okay, now everybody's here, so issue the order now. And he said, I didn't call everybody here for your case. I called everybody here to learn Torah, and therefore I'm not going to do that. However, there were comments that in our days that there's a lot of Ramayim, there's a lot of untrustworthy individuals, we are concerned not being able to get them, and the Gemara doesn't say explicitly, but perhaps the implication is that we would be willing to issue that order. Okay, the Gemara has concluded those halachas. The Gemara refers back to the Mishnah, where we said that if somebody steals something and then he bequeaths it to his children, they are patur from having to pay. And then it concluded and said that if it's something that has a chayis, then they do have to pay. Something that has a chayis usually means land, which can carry a lien on it. So Gemara says that Rebbe said this Mishnah over to Reb Shimon, his son, and he taught him chayis here doesn't mean something that carries a lien, doesn't mean land. It means something which is highly visible. So even a cow that he plows with, a donkey that he drives, he would have to return all those things. The children would have to return all those things. And the reason is because since everybody sees them, they use them in public, people are going to recognize that this was a stolen object stolen by the father. It'll be a bizayin for the father. And therefore, for the covet of the father, they have to return it. Rav Chizda asked, Rav Kahana asked Rav, what about something in between? What about something which people won't have a chance to see in the street? It's not used in the street, but people come into the house, we'll see, like a table or the bed, which could refer to a chair that people eat on. What about that? So he said, implying that you can take this halacha further, and it's like the cow and the donkey, it should have the same halachas. Okay, now we're up to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says that there are certain situations which you're not allowed to take coins from somebody, and that's if the money that he's holding is assumed to be theft. So, for example, if you want to change coins, you have a large coin, you want to exchange it for smaller coins, you're not allowed to do that with a moiches and not with the gabay of the king. Now, a moiches is somebody who collects a head tax. This is not taxes like the R&R. It's not referring to a tax which is used for the general benefit of the population to build communal needs. It's referring to a tax where someone just had the right to take money from people. And it was by order of the king, but there was nothing, it was just money. It was not used for anything for the benefit of anyone. It was just for his own pocket. Now, the kiss of the gabbai of the king, that could be a similar order of the king or something that's a general collection. So you're not allowed to have them change coins for you from that bag, the bag where they put that collection money. You're also not allowed to take tzedakah from that bag. However, you're allowed to take from these people's own money, from their money that they have at home or that they have at their stand in the shuk, that's not from these collections. The reason is the money from these collections is considered to be stolen, the Mishnah implies, and you'd be taking stolen property. However, what they have in their own homes, in their own possession, that's not stolen necessarily, and therefore you're allowed to take that. Now, the Gemara begins, the Gemara quotes a brisa right away that says you are allowed to give him a dinar and take change. So if you owe him less than a dinar, and the smallest coin you have is a dinar, you're allowed to take change from him. And that's because if you don't take that, it's just a loss. So you don't have to undergo a loss. It's kematzal miyadam, Rashi says. Now the Gemara gets into halachas of dina and machusa dina. Are you halachically obligated to follow these rules? You have to pay collections to these individuals. So the Gemara asks, why do we consider the moichin to be thieves? Shmuel says dina mechus dina, which means you have to follow these laws, and therefore they're not stealing; they're collecting it legitimately. So the Gemara answers two answers. Rav China Bar Kana says the name of Shmuel, it's a moichin who has a right to collect an unlimited amount, just whatever number he wants. That's theft. There's no way that could be considered legitimate. And the Rabbi Yanai says it's talking about where he was not appointed by the king. He's not given a legal right to collect. He's just a strong guy, like a troll under the bridge, and he planted himself on the road and decided he's collecting from everybody. Now, the Gemara says these two answers were given to other questions as well, other scenarios in which we asked the question, what about a dina machusa dina? And the answer was these two things. It's not dina machusa dina because of these reasons. So let's bring those questions and how these answers may have been applied there. Somewhere says some apply to the following scenario. The halacha is you're not allowed to put on clothing which is shatnez, kilayim. Even not allowed to put it on 10 layers of clothing because it's still considered to be wearing it. If you're doing it because you want to hide the clothing underneath to escape the tax collectors, you're not allowed to do that because it is kilayim. So this Mishnah who says this is not like Rabbi Akiva, who says that it's forbidden under all circumstances to cheat the tax collectors. And Rav Shimon, however, saying of Rabbi Akiva that one is permitted. So the Gemara says, what's the machlekes here? Pshat and Rabbi Akiva. Le'inin kilayim, I can understand the machlekes is whether or not a davashin miskavein, somebody who is wearing kilayim, not with intent of wearing anything, is that considered to be aser or not in halachas kilayim? However, what's a machlekes about cheating the tax collectors? It shouldn't be permitted. Shmuel says dina machusa dina, and then we have the two answers. Rav China Bar Kahana says it's a machus that has no limit, and the Rabbi Yanai says it's one who is self-appointed but does not have any legal right. And the third situation in which these two answers may have applied is a situation where we have a Mishnah that says that you're allowed to make a neder in order to avoid people taking your property away from you. So if there's a murderer running around who wants to take a ransom from you, which is pretty much a holdup, or you have charamim, those are strong-armed guys who steal money by force, same kind of situation, and meichsin, as we're discussing here, the tax collectors. So you're allowed to escape from them by making a neder that to avow that this property is either truma or that it belongs to the king. That's if he says that all the fruits in the world will be also to me if this isn't truma or if it doesn't belong to the king. You think it's mine, but convincing you that it belongs to the king, and that way they shouldn't collect it from him. And of course the neder is false, but they don't have to go with the neder all fruits in the world are usher because it's a means of escaping these types of frauds. So Mara asks, why should he be able to escape the meichas like that? Shmuel says dina m'chusatina. And there you have the two answers. Either it's one who's unlimited or one who is not appointed. Now, the Gemara quotes Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says it's not talking about a meichas Yisrael, it's talking about a meichas Kenani. So the Gemara says, we have a brisa, a Yisrael and a Kenani who are ointzin, that are people who force others to give up their money, and they come to court to try to force property away from someone. So if you could acquit the guy that they're attacking in a Dina Yisrael, do that, and tell the litigant that in our halachos, in our rules, he's exempt. If you could convince them in their own court system, do that as well, and say even according to your rules, he's exempt. If you can't do either of them, then you're allowed to trick him. You're allowed to fool him. Now that's Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva says you're not allowed to trick people because you'll create a chil Hashem. You have to be Mekadashim Shemayim. So Mara asks, Rabbi Kiva says the only issue is because of the Kiddush Hashem, but if not for that, you would be allowed to, but you're not allowed to steal even from a Kanani. The Marco Tzabraisa, where Rabbi Shimon says this is a Josh. Rabbi Kiva said when it came from Zephirin, how does one know that Gezel Kanani is Aser? Or quotes a pasuk talking about the sale, where one sells himself as an Eved, that he can be redeemed. So it says, Achar Nimkar, Geula Tehiyalai. After he is sold, he can be redeemed. It's talking about an Eved Ivri that is sold to a Nachri, to the Gemara would here call a Kanani, which is Lashon Saginar from all types of Nachrim. So he can be redeemed. So you see that you don't just take him back, you can't rip him off. You have to redeem. You need to pay to get him away. Now, says the Gemara, you may think that you're allowed to let him rip you off. You're allowed to go further and have him demand any type of value, even as not actual value. And Rashi and Taisos here, who's ripping whom off? What is the pshat in this Gemara? But that's what the Gemara says. And to show that no one can overcharge or undercharge anybody, the pasuk says, "V'chishav imkanei," we make an exact calculation with the purchaser. Now, says Rav Yosef, so there we have a kasha, because over here it implies that all types of gezel akum is aser, but in the previous mission it sounded like you're allowed to do gezel akum, if not for issues of chil Hashem. So Gemara says that Rav Yosef is not a kasha, different types of kinanim. One is a real kinani, one is a ger toishav, who's makabel, not to be Eved V'Dezara, however, he's not makabel other mitzvahs. Now, the Gemara asks, there shouldn't be a difference between the two, you shouldn't need a separate pasuk for the two. Abai says they're both written in the same pasuk, just a few psukim before this pasuk about the redemption. It talks about the sale, and over there it puts all of them together. It says, somebody sells himself, lager, toishav imach, or le'eker mishpachas ger. What are all these things? So, lager is referring to not to you, but even to the ger. Ger Teishav means it's a ger Teishav, not even Yisrael, just someone who's not Eved Avodah Zarah. And Mishpachas ger is a real Eved Avodah Zarah, and Eker is somebody who is sold to Avodah Zarah. So, you see then that it's all the same. So, therefore, we shouldn't have two psukim for it. So it says, Rava, we'll give a different answer. One is talking about stealing directly the property of the Kanani, and the other is talking about just not paying back alone. Stealing you're not allowed to do. To not pay back alone, it implies here that one is allowed to do, because that absolves one of chil Hashem. And not paying the tax is the same thing. It's just not paying an obligation. So says the Gemara, Abaye asks, but the case of the Eved Ivri is also not paying back an obligation. And to take the Eved Ivri and just not pay back his redemption. So the Gemara says Rava goes according to his own chita that says that his gufay kanai, he actually owns him. That means whoever owns the Eved Ivri owns the guf of the Eved Ivri. If you're going to take the Eved Ivri away, it's a real gzela. It's not just paying back for what he spent, and the guf doesn't actually belong to him. On that subject, the Gemara quotes Rav Bibi Bar Gidl, says the name of Shimon Chasida, Gezel Kinani, theft of a Kinani is forbidden to do. However, don't have to return his lost object. His aveda is mutter. So the Gemara says, what's the source for these? That his gezel is aser. The Gemara says, Rav Huna learned from the fact that it says, you can devour all the amim that are given biyadcha. That's only if they are masurim biyadcha. At our time, they're not masurim biyadcha, and therefore it's aser to be oichlam. About their lost object, their aveda, that's mutter because of Rav Kamma bar Gurios, name of Rav. The pasuk says the chaved is achicha. That's what you should return, but it's only achicha, not for the kanani. So this Gemara, maybe that's only if it doesn't come to your hand. That's if you didn't find it and pick it up. Now you don't have to go pick it up, but maybe when it came to your hand, now you already have it. You have to return it. So we're no, because it says umatzas the chaved is achicha. Asher toivad mimenu umatzasa. If it's umatzasa, then it's actually in your hand, and still saying that it's only achicha. Now, on that subject, the Gemara quotes a writer from Pinchas ben Yair, who says in a situation where there's a possible chil Hashem, even the aveda of a Kanani, even lost object, is usher to keep. Shmuel says, however, if it makes a mistake, you're allowed to keep the mistake, but since it's just a mistake, there will be no Chal Hashem. The Gemara quotes a case with Shmuel. He bought a tool, a fork of some sort, with the assumption that it was of gold, but it was for the price of a copper one, and therefore it was less. Also, the price was 4 zuz, and he ended up giving 1 zuz less, and got away with it. Rav Kahana had a different story. He bought from a kusi 120 barrels in the price of 100, and he also kept 1 extra zuz. And someone said, it's not. There are 2 lashonos in Rashi, whether he said or the kusi said, see that I'm relying on you. I'm not counting them to make sure that the number is correct, as if to say, don't blame me if the numbers are wrong. Now, the Gemara says, Ravina bought a tree in partnership with a kusi in order to cut it up for firewood. He said to his servant, go quickly and take from the lower trunk the pieces that are cut from the lower trunk. Those will be thicker, because the kusi only cares that we have an equal number of pieces. He doesn't care about the size of the piece, doesn't pay attention to that. Rav Ashi was traveling along the way, and he saw branches of a grapevine lying in the field, and there were bunches of grapes on it. He said to the servant, go see if they belong to a kusi, bring it. If it belongs to Yisrael, don't bring it. There was a kusi that heard that, and he was sitting in the field, and he heard that, and he said, is it permitted to take that belong to a kusi? He said, no, a kusi will take money for it, a Yisrael will not. The Gemara now quotes Shmuel's Ikar Halacha. Shmuel says, Dina Mechusa Dina, the rules of the government are the proper rules. Rava says there's a proof to that, because they take trees from people and they use it to build bridges, and we are willing to walk on it. We are willing to pass over the river on those bridges, and we're not afraid of using stolen properties. You see, it's not stolen because they do have the din right to take it, Dina Mechusa Dina. So Abaye asked, maybe it's because of Yish, maybe it's because the owners are Miyayish from it, and therefore Al Pi Din, even though it's stolen, and Dina Mechusa is Lav Dina, it belongs to them as it was stolen, and it's not a problem of using property which is not theirs, because they have a Kinyan Zela. So he answered, if not for Dina Mechusa Dina, why would the original owner be Miyayish? There is no Yish. The Shliach didn't do what the king said, and therefore they shouldn't be Miyayish. Because the king said, go cut 1 tree from every valley, and they went and took it all from 1 valley. So obviously the reason is because the messenger of the king has the halachic responsibility of the king, and therefore, even though the king didn't say do that, they, because of Dina and Mechusa, have the powers of the king. The king wanted them to take 1 from every valley, but they didn't want to spend time going around to all the valleys. Instead, they took it all from 1, and they took money. And therefore, it must be Dina and Mechusa Dina. Now, says Rava Halacha, if you have 4 people that have a partnership in grain that's collected in the silo, 3 of them take their grain home, 1 of them is left with the grain in the silo that's his portion, and then the tax collector comes and wants to take the portion for the king, and he takes it all from this one guy. So the other ones have to pay back that he paid their portion to him, and then what the tax collector has taken is not stolen. He's going to get his property back. It's not stolen because Dina Mechusa Dina, and he has a right to collect from all of them. However, if the one there left in the silo is an oris, a sharecropper, and doesn't actually belong to him, who's just taking his chelik as payment, then he's not allowed to give the chelik of the Baal Bayis. And if he does, it's been stolen, and we can't use that. Now, another halacha Rava says is 2 people that are living in a city, one of them is allowed to take a mashkin for the other one to pay the taxes to the king. We need the taxes to be paid. You're allowed to take the mashkin, but that's only for the land tax and the head tax for this year. But that of last year, the tax collector has already given the king his portion. If the king is satisfied with it, anything that the tax collector collects now for last year is just going to go in the pocket of the tax collector. On that, there is no Dina Mechusa Dina for him to keep it, and therefore you're not allowed to take a mashkan for it. Says further, if you have Akum who have animals and they live within the Tchum, you're not allowed to buy animals from them because their animals probably got mixed with animals of Yisrael, and he's holding stolen animals of Yisrael. However, the ones that live close to the Tchum, you are allowed to, their animals didn't mix. Ravina says, if the owners went after them, though, then you have to worry that they did mix, and also to buy from them even outside the Tchum. Next, Rav used to announce, and some say it was Rav Huna, those who go up to Eretz Yisrael and those who come from Eretz Yisrael too. Vavel, any Bar Yisrael, any member of Yisrael who knows testimony on a kusi and does not say it, does not claim from him, and then in court he goes and testifies on the Kusi's behalf against the Yisrael, we put him in Chayrim, because by participating in the courts of the Kusi, they're going to take money based on an Eid Echad, and that's not proper halacha. Now, that's only if the situation is where they are an Eid Echad, but if it's two Eidim, you don't need to worry about it because it is proper halacha. And also, this is only true if it is a low-level court where people in the village make their own court, but if it's a court set up by the government, then it's okay because they do require two witnesses. Based on one witness, they'll only make one swear. Furthermore, Rav Ashi says, when we were in the home of Rav Huna, they asked, what about an Adam Chashiv, a respectable person that he is relied on, as if he was two people, can you take money away based on his testimony or not? Or do you say, since he's an Adam Chashiv, he can't push them off, and therefore they should testify, and the Gemara leaves that as a teiku.